Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is Pastor Bruce. Welcome to my podcast. Today, I want to talk to you about a couple of things. First of all, the Children's Bill of Rights from the UN. The UN says we're going to tell everybody how children should be and how they should be treated. And this is as of April 20th, 1996. I remember reading it on cereal boxes with my kids and laughing at it, saying, there's no way. I'll slap you upside the head if I have to. Don't think I won't. You learn what you're supposed to learn. And I was hardcore. I'm 20 years military. I don't believe in slacking off on people who have potential. And the greatest individuals who have potential are the children. And we slack off on them. We are dumbing them down. And I'll get to that in a minute. But under the Children's Bill of Rights, the preamble says, we believe that the successful society invests its best resources and hopes in the success of its children. An unsuccessful society ignores and maltreats children. Well, if that's the case, ladies and gentlemen, we've got 15 and 16-year-olds in Chicago carrying around Uzis. I think we've maltreated the children in this country. If we have children walking into schools killing other children, we have maltreated and ignored the needs of the children. Now, according to the Universal rights under this, Article 1, as compared to adults, children until the age of 18 have the right to receive special care or protection. Now, this is stupid because compared to adults, all right, so if they're entitled to receive special care and protection as children compared to adults, then when they turn 18, they're supposed to be adults? So they should continue to receive special care. The American Psychiatric Society says that children do not mature mentally, their brains do not mature until the age of 26. So how can you compare children until the age of 18? It should be to 26 because they're not mentally ready. Children all have the same rights no matter what country they were born in or living in, whatever their sex is, what their race is, or what their religion is. Now, that's a bunch of baloney because this has been around since 1996. And if you go back over to the Middle East, girls that were born prior to 1996, they can't drive cars. They have to keep their faces covered. The little girl who called her teddy bear Allah caused the teacher to be punished because that shouldn't have happened. And the young girl that was in Iran, I think it was, that went with her boyfriend over to some location, and she was raped over there. Then when she reported it, she was arrested because she should not have been in that location. Is this equal rights? Is this sitting there saying that they should be treated equally, whatever their sex is? No, it isn't. When you have individuals that attack, like the National Organization of Women, the American Atheist Organization, the news media, even the government is attacking Christianity in this country, and it's attacking the belief of children. Is that right? I've already talked about kids owning guns and walking around shooting people. Is that right? So this Children's Bill of Rights is about the biggest bunch of baloney that there is. But keep in mind, it's one step closer to a socialist government controlled by the UN. Now, this is interesting. Every child has the right to express his or her opinion freely, and adults should address that opinion with their children in every discussion that affects him or her. Children have the right to carry out research to help form their opinion. Now, don't get me wrong, I agree with that. The problem is this. We're going to go back to an article that was written on April 23rd, 2012 in the Huffington Post. Now, that's a left-wing media outlet. And it said the article is called American High School Students Are Reading Books at a 5th Grade Appropriate Level. And it goes on to say high school students today are reading books intended for children with the reading levels far below those appropriate for teens, according to a recent report. A compilation of the top 40 books teens in grades 9 through 12 are reading in school show that the average reading level of that list is 5.3, barely above the 5th grade. And this is taken from the results come from what kids are reading, a book reading habits of students in American schools, a report from Renaissance Learning Corporation. The data covers books reading records for the 2010-2011 academic year among 2.6 million students in grades 1 through 12 from 24,465 schools in all 50 states. So this isn't just taking one little thing and looking at it and saying this is the nation. It's actually taking from the nation and saying this is what it is. Now, if we've got a 5th grade reading level before the time we hit the age of 12, you have to explain to me how every child has a right to express his or her own opinion freely when they haven't even developed the language capabilities to be able to express themselves. And if the psychology departments out there are sitting there saying the children's minds don't develop until the age of 26, why should we even listen to them? And when they get into college, now here's the sad part, okay? For the majority of these people at 5.3 reading levels, they're not going to go to college. For the majority of them. So that we have dumbed down our society to where these kids can't even get jobs. They can't do math. They can't read English to understand what they have to do. And for those who have a higher than 5.3 reading level that get into college, well, they're not allowed to be able to express themselves. Hello? Oh, that's right. You didn't hear about that, did you? You didn't hear about their refusing the conservatives to be able to speak their mind, the Christians to be able to go out and have prayer meetings in public squares. According to Nancy Pelosi, it's vile speech, vile venom that they say. You know, this is, you want to talk attacks, read the stuff that's out there. What the UN says that we're allowed to have. Children have the right to privacy to the same extent adults have. No, they don't. No, they don't. My children's doors were never locked. Because if I heard something going on in that room, I went in. Dad, leave me alone. No, son, what are you doing? And find out what they're doing. And if it's acceptable, I'll leave them alone. If it's not acceptable, I'll talk to them about it. Have a decent conversation. Right to respect. Children should be treated with respect and courtesy by adults as well as by other children. You know how ridiculous that sounds? Do you know? I heard a case where a child did something wrong and an adult sat there and said, don't do it. And the child just started mimicking everything the adult said to the child. Don't do that. Don't do that. Don't be rude. Don't be rude. You can't have that. You can't have that. Don't be stupid. Don't be stupid. You know, and we want to give children respect. Little kids that can't even read beyond the 5th grade. This is absolutely bizarre. Children separated from their birth parents as at birth or at an early age have the right to know that this happened. Children have a right to know their name, who their birth parents are, and when and where they were born. Well, you know, when you have unprotected sex and you have girls going out there having sex with 3, 4, 5 different guys, and it happens, people, don't be ignorant. And they get pregnant. They don't know who the father is. I remember Maury Kovic's show, I think it was. One young lady sat there and said, I know this is the father to my son. Okay, all right, fine. It's the father of your son. So they did the DNA test, and guess what? He's not the father. He's not the father. She didn't know who the father was because she had sex with multiple partners. So how are you supposed to do that? And she's with the mother. The child's with the mother, and he can't say who the father is. Now, that may not be a problem, but understand this, that if the same father has children with different women, and those children grow up, part of their DNA is the same. and they're going to have sexual relations, and that's going to happen and over until we start getting mentally and physically we'll have to use the word retarded children, because the intermixing of the uh, genes are happening all over again. That's why marriage is important. That's why one partner is important. That's why your children will have your DNA and your wife's DNA, and you know that she can go out there and she can marry whoever she wants and not have to worry about a mixed DNA creating physically and handicapped children. So understand that. It's important. Children have a right to nurturing and caring parents or guardians. Well, you know, that's a religious thing right there. Every religion believes that the children should be loved and cared for. So there's nothing wrong with that. And children have the right to leisure, play, and participation in culture and artistic activities. Children have the right to enjoy at least a few hours every day when they are free from worries. Oh, give me a break, will you please? You know, until that girl spreads her legs and a guy violates her, they're free from worry. Once that happens, that young lady is scared to death for a short period of time. So that's why abstinence is important, because we want the children to grow up. We want them to have a free life, free from worries. Now, you can't have that if you've got a 10th grade or 11th grade or 12th grade reading level and you want to get into college and you want to make sure you're going to put pressure on yourself. You're going to worry. You really are. But the American school system, and I can't speak about the rest of the country, other than I knew a woman who was from India. In one year, the family went back to celebrate a holiday with the rest of the family, and she had a very large family. And she was going to, it wasn't a public school or a private school, but I forget the name of the school she was going to. And she went back, her kids had their homework, and they're sitting there doing the homework. And one of their cousins was doing homework, and they're the same age. And for example, he's doing second grade math, and the other is doing fifth grade math, and they're both in the third grade. So the Indian student was doing better in their math than the American student. And she felt humiliated because she thought the educational system in America was better than the rest of the world. Ladies and gentlemen, look it up. You'll find out that back in the 1950s and 60s, even in the early 70s, well, maybe not the early 70s, but the 60s, we were rated in the top 5 schools in the country, in the world. Top 5. Today, out of the industrial nations, we're ranked 37th because we have dumbed down our society. What happens when you dumb down? Let's go back. I hate sticking my head back 250 years ago, but I'll do that. What happened in the slave period? Okay. We know that the slaves were bought by the owners. We know that they were given clothes, given roof, and given food. We know that they had to work out in the field, but they were not allowed to learn how to read or learn how to write. Why? Because when you learn how to read and write and do math, when you learn, your mind develops and you get to know what situation you're in is wrong. So therefore, they sat there and kept them dumb so that they would know nothing but their slave lifestyle. Okay, understand that. When you dumb down children today, when you put them out there in the streets and they can't read properly or do math or write properly, how are they going to get good jobs? How are they even going to get a job? As one superintendent from an Atlanta school district said, just because a child has 12 years of education does not mean they're ready for the workforce. Of course not. Not if you're giving them a reading level of 5.3. Not if you're sitting there pampering them and coddling them and giving in to everything that they want. Well, not when you tell teachers they don't have authority in the classroom. They don't have to earn respect in the classroom. They are not allowed to punish because that's abusing the child. The children are going to do whatever they want. And we've seen this. We've seen this when kids walk into schools with guns and kill other students and teachers. We see this with kids 14, 15, and 16 out in the streets with Uzis and 9mm. We see this when children refuse to listen to teachers and fight them. And we see that children, and listen, if I was 14 years old, 15, 16 years old, and I had a 23 to a 25-year-old teacher come up and want to have sex with me, yeah, brother, thank you very kindly. I would have enjoyed that. But that wasn't the case back in my day. Teachers had respect for themselves, and teachers had respect for the students, and students had respect for the teachers. And if you did or say or do anything inappropriate, you were punished for it. But today, that doesn't matter because you're dumbing down you're making the slaves the next generation. And they have been doing this slowly over the course of years. Now, for those, like I said, that have the 5.3 reading level, you can't get jobs out there. So what are you going to do? Welfare, food stamps, low-income housing. Well, how are you going to pay your bills when you don't know how to do math? So you're going to screw everything up. So the best thing for you to do is go out there and make a whole bunch of money selling drugs. Dumbing you down to be drug dealers. That's what our society is doing to the inner city schools. Now, there are some schools that are not like that. But I remember a story about a black principal in a school in New York City that was majority black, and he couldn't tolerate it anymore. He said, enough is enough. So what he did, he's got all the students, got them in uniforms. Public school, got them in uniforms. And then he separated. On one side of the hall was the boys, on the other side were the girls. And after several months, they noticed that the intelligence of the individuals started to go up. That respect in the classroom was starting to go up. That students listened more, and of course the guys listened more than the girls were obviously listening all the time. But it worked. The education of the kids was getting better, and they were becoming smarter. And what happened? What happened? Why did that system fail? Well, we have to thank the American Civil Liberties Union. Those lawyers came in and said it's unconstitutional. You can't do that. You can't force them to wear uniforms. You can't force them to be separate. You know, that's helping to dumb down our society because once you mix them back together, guys were stupid. They tried to act tough and bad and everything in front of the girls, and they didn't pay attention to the teachers. And what they had learned diminished after the ACLU came in and said, no, you can't do that. You see, I've been against the ACLU for a long time, but in this particular case, they were totally wrong. And they attacked Christianity. A young boy who is in a wheelchair, can't go out and run around and play games or anything, brings out his Bible and reads his Bible. The teacher comes up and sits there and says, you can't read it. It's a violation of church and state. And the school has to go to court to defend their decision to do this. And the judge said, hey, freedom of speech. He can read whatever he wants to. You can't deny him that. And so the school spent thousands of dollars for a lawyer. The parents had to spend thousands of dollars for a lawyer to fight this. And the school lost. And so the child was out there after the decision, was reading the books, and the teacher came up and said, well, okay, you can read your book, but don't move your lips. You know, ignorance in this society, we're going to attack your Christian beliefs. The media does it. The National Organization of Women does it. The National Atheist Organization does it. And the LGBT community does it as well. And why? Why? Because if you go back to 1917 and 1925, people, the first thing they did was attack the church. And when you dumb down the next generation, they don't know. When you don't teach them where they came from and how they got here and what they need to do to make our society better, then you lost. You really did. Teach children that 250 years ago we had slave owners that refused to give up their slaves. Even when President Lincoln said, I'm freeing all the slaves, there were slave owners, Democratic slave owners in the South that refused to do that. And any slave that tried to get out of their control was punished. So teach it. Teach it. And also teach that there were white slaves. You see, the N-word that was used back then was defined as someone who was illiterate and unintelligent. Well, that could probably go for today. And it doesn't matter the color of your skin. If you're reading at a 5.3 reading level, you're unintelligent. You're ignorant. And in most cases, you're illiterate. So the definition of that word is still justifiable. And like I said, it doesn't matter the color of your skin, because the white people were back there as slaves doing the exact same thing. Maybe not treated as badly because they didn't have to pay for the white slaves. They just came and begged for jobs and they were giving it to them. But they were treated almost exactly like the blacks. But you're not going to hear that in American history. You're not going to hear that in a history class. You're going to hear about how the black people were suppressed during the slave period of the whites in America. Well, keep in mind, ladies and gentlemen, that it was the Dutch trading company that went over to Africa and traded trinkets and other things for people. And they brought them, and it was on the Dutch trading ships that they died and were thrown into the ocean. It was the Dutch who brought them here to America and sold them to us. So think about that. You want to blame Americans for taking people who were in desperate situations and helping them? Or do you want to blame the Dutch who put them in those desperate situations? Or what happened if they would have stayed in Africa? Because most of the slaves that were brought over, male slaves that were brought over, were defeated in tribal wars, and they were prisoners of the tribe that won. And those prisoners were transferred over to the Dutch Trading Company and sent here to America. What would have happened to them? Would they have been integrated into that tribe that won, or would they have been slaughtered or sacrificed? We don't know. We have to look at history and see what history says about the ones who took slaves in Africa and what they did with them. And look at how they treat their people today. They'll go in and create genocides. They'll destroy a whole tribe. They don't care. So, when you dumb people down to the 5th grade level and you expect them to sit there and make rational decisions, to be able to participate in conversations with adults, you have absolutely no clue of what you're talking about. And it's chilling to think that the majority of the population is not going to be smart enough to do anything in about another 60 years. Now, that being the case, they're going to be slaves. And they will be so stupid, they won't have a clue what's going on. And second part of that, let me bring that up, are these cell phones, iPads. When they communicate, they don't use whole words. You see, instead of spelling out, laugh out loud, they just LOL. At least they know the first letters. But give it the next generation and ask them, spell out LOL. Now, there's a show that it's not showing so much as it used to show, but Water's World, or Word, I don't know which one it is. It's on Fox. He goes out and he talks to people and he asks people different questions. And it is absolutely amazing, especially among college students, they don't have a clue. And they're simple questions. Who's the vice president? Who's the secretary of state? And who did we defeat in the Civil War? I loved it when people say, oh, England. England in the Civil War? That was the Revolutionary War. They don't know. And some would say, well, Who did we defeat in the Revolutionary War? Oh, France? They didn't know. They had no clue. These are college students who are supposed to have better than a 5.3 grade reading level, that are supposed to be intelligent, and they have no clue. Well, we know they're not intelligent because the Psychiatric Society says your mind doesn't develop till you're 26. So listen, I've gone on about this long enough. I do appreciate your time and listening to it. I hope that one day you will wake up and smell the roses and understand that you're being turned, or this country is being turned into a slave nation, an unsophisticated nation. And you know that when you have the political leaders going out there using profanity in order, and even the news media is using profanity in order to express themselves, because they don't have an education capable of using words. Why? Because they've got to talk to you readers who read at 5.3, who text with obscure little things like LOL, OMG. You don't know, so they've got to talk to you. They've got to talk down to you. Therefore, their educational level doesn't have to be that high either. We're destroying this country, and we're using the Democratic-controlled teachers union and the Democratic-controlled educational system to destroy our society. Ladies and gentlemen, you've got to make changes. You've got to help make changes in this country. First and foremost, if there's a vote coming up for a voucher system, vote for it. Get your kids out of the public school and put them in the private school. As one in the year 2000, I was attending a voucher conversation in Solano County. And one of the teachers stood up and said, and looking at the voucher program, if the voucher program is accepted, we will lose $10 million the first year. Now, at the time, I believe it was $596.75 per student per month is what they received from the government. So multiply that amount, or divide $10 million by that amount for 12 months, and it'll tell you how many students, if you can do math, how many students that school district is going to lose to private schools. And they didn't want to. You know why? Because if they lost that many students, they would have to cut back on teachers. Well, you can't fire a teacher if they've got tenure. So what are you going to do? They didn't want, and now, and California has one of the worst. I think they're 37th in the nation, 37th or 38th in the nation for their educational standards. It is pathetic. So if there's a voucher vote coming up, vote for vouchers. Put your kids in private schools that don't have to fall under the rules of the public school. Start teaching your children respect for authority and for adults. And we see there's lack of respect when people refuse to listen to policemen. So understand, we need to start changing this one person at a time, and first and foremost is yourself. And I'm going to throw a little Christianity into this. Jesus said, change your heart. Change your heart. If you don't like what you're doing, you've got to change your heart to change yourself. If you don't like drinking, if you're an alcoholic, you got to change your heart and turn away from it. And that's what we have to do with the dumbing down of our society. We've got to change your heart and say, I'm going to do something to make things better. First and foremost, get rid of the teachers union. Because states like Florida and Arizona, they don't have a teachers union. You do your job, or guess what? You're fired. There's no teachers union that's going to protect you. And they don't have tenure. So it doesn't matter if you're in the school for a year or 10 years or 15 years. I remember a story from upstate New York where two Christian teachers, or actually Christians who were teachers, they were third grade teachers, and it was coming time to do the third grade test. And the principal came up. This is the Democratic-controlled educational system. And the principal came up and said, change the answers so they get more right. so that we can get more money. Well, the teachers, because they were Christians, they felt that they couldn't do that. And they went to another teacher who was associated with the school board and said, we couldn't do that. 2 years later, from the time they made the complaint against the principal, 2 years later, the principal left his office. He was suspended for that 2 years with pay. He was suspended. Thousands of dollars were spent in the court system. And at the end of the 2 years, he was allowed to walk away with his full pension. Thank you very kindly. Did he reach pension age? No, but he could walk away with it. See, this is the problem with the system. When you have to pay, you have to play in the system. When you don't have to pay, you don't play in the system, and therefore they can do whatever and say whatever they want. And you're stuck there. Here's one more for the children. The children have the right to be protected from all forms of maltreatment by an adult, including parents. This includes, but not limited to, physical abuse, including torture, violence, hitting or slapping, harmful drugs, including alcohol, tobacco, mental abuse, and sexual abuse. Well, let me tell you something. Physical abuse, if they're beating them with a belt, no. If they're smacking them on that brainless part of their body, nothing wrong with that. That's slapping them on the bottom. That's hitting them. Okay? There's certain forms of physical punishment you can do that's going to wake the child up and smell the roses. But this one line shows that we're trying to build a wimpy, crybaby society. And thank you, UN, for coming up with this stupid Bill of Rights. It says children over the age of 14 have the right to vote on issues that directly affect children in all regions. 14 years old, they don't have a 5th grade reading level. And they're going to vote on rights? Children accused of crimes have at least the same rights to adults. All right, I can agree with that. But you see, young people under 21 have the right not to go to war. Oh, well, you see, now they're dictating to states what the state or the countries want their citizenship to do. We have 18-year-olds who go to war, people. All right, so that violates the UN Bill of Rights, so who cares? But anyway, again, thank you very kindly for listening. I do appreciate it. You see on my AM Voice page, there's donations if you'd like to give a donation to help with the research and study so we can come up with viable proof of everything that we talk about on this station. That would help, okay? Your donations will help. And it's amvoice.net. If you're on it, you know it. If you are getting this through Gmail or Facebook or any other form, YouTube, you can go to that page, and there's a donation page, and you can give a donation. $1, $5, $10. Listen, if you're a millionaire, you want to give 100,000, thank you very kindly. It'll be put to very good use to help hire more people. Okay, this is the ground floor. This is the beginning of this show, and I'd like to make it grow. I'd like to hire people on to help us do the job that needs to be done to get the one man's voice out there so that the rest of the world does not have to sit there and take one side of the issue. They can hear both sides. Again, God bless. Thank you. Enjoy your day.